Mike, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yep.
Your talk yesterday about the transitioning from a synchronous way to asynchronous way of working, it was good. I really enjoyed it. So first of all, what is asynchronous working?
Okay, yeah, so with asynchronous working, it is, I can't remember the quote exactly, but it's
That was a
about,
good one, actually.
oh, a very close friend of mine came up with it when he was reviewing my slides, and I was like, that's perfect. But it's, yeah, collaboration without the need for instant feedback.
Feedback, yeah.
So it's about giving people that flexibility to work in a way and feed into something and a decision their way, right? The problem with traditional synchronous meetings can be that you are forcing people into a way of thinking that they may not be comfortable with. You can interpret it in quite a few different like ways that with asynchronous working, it's all about that flexibility.
In the old days, email, it was pretty fine to wait 2 days for the answer for the email.
Yes.
Now, if somebody doesn't reply on Slack for 20 minutes, you feel a little bit of discomfort. For after 2 hours, discomfort is a little bit bigger. So Slack helps with the asynchronous work or not?
So
I'm challenging you.
yeah, no. So with that, it's then about changing your perception, right? So if you send a message in Slack and don't get a response in 20 minutes, that's fine, right? And it's about making sure that people are okay with that. Part of the asynchronous working should also be creating enough information centrally that people can answer their own questions. So as an example, if you went into a channel and asked a question and didn't get a response straight away, during that time, you've either got other stuff that you could be doing, or you can actually just go and see whether or not there's a document or a Slack chat that has already answered that question. One of the things that I pointed out yesterday, and we're really proud that we introduced, is having that public communication, right? Removing DMs.
Yeah, no direct message.
Yeah, you still need direct messages like for things that aren't work related, more from that social aspect. But when it comes to work questions, ask the expert, ask the channels, ask the groups, because what you'll find is you get a much better response, and sometimes a much faster response than if you DM somebody. A recent example of that was somebody on our team needed access to some software, and they spoke in a public channel, and they did an app message to myself, to somebody else on the team, and both of us were in a different session, right, for like the next 2 hours, which means we wouldn't have seen it. Luckily, because it was in a public channel, somebody else who had the ability swooped in and went, done, right? Like, by doing that, you do shorten that time of message response, but it still shouldn't ever be a requirement, right? We've got to get comfortable. Sometimes your message isn't going to be responded for quite a while. Trust that people will get to it. Then the opposite of that is when it comes to those messages you have to deal with right now, right? But that's then when you put stuff in place, right? So for a Slack example, if you needed something dealing with right now, maybe use like a warning emoji, right?
So sometimes highlight that.
Exactly, right? It's about making sure that yourself, your team, how you use Slack, everybody understands the purpose, right? When you need messages right now, it could be, you could even start a Teams call or a Slack call and say, like, I need people in on this right now. And as long as you've got a good relationship with your team and a good process, they will pick that kind of stuff up.
What are the dangers of asynchronous working?
There's now so much information coming in, and it's not just Slack, right? Because what we try and use is Atlassian to handle Confluence documents and feedback. Then you've got Jira, like for your backlog tickets. We've also got Miro for like that type of asynchronous working. So you can end up with a lot of stuff. And if you've got it set up that you get all your notifications through Slack, they'll all be in one place. Still, that's a lot of noise. So as an engineering manager, part of my role is now making sure that people are comfortable with that, but also tweaking it so that it's actually supportable and it isn't too much. The benefit is that you can catch up, right? You haven't got that fear of missing out because all the communication, all the notifications, they're all there. But that management aspect of all that noise, get comfortable with it and work together to understand how to remove that or how to divert it, but don't go back to a point where it doesn't exist. Right? Don't be afraid of this amount of information. It's about just getting methods.
How to survive this whole.
Yeah, one of the things that
How to be efficient.
yeah, one of the things that we use in Slack, which is really nice, is there's an all on reds
Yeah.
option, and that gives you a good way to be able to scan stuff and just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or if you need something and you read a message and you're like, I haven't got time for that right now, I'll deal with that later, you put a reminder on it, right?
Yeah, that's actually a good option.
And it's all of these little tips that you have to find yourself with your manager, because just because it works for me doesn't mean it'll work for you.
Yeah.
But that's how, like, working together, like to understand that stuff, that's really important.
What do you think? What is the most important tool in the engineering manager toolbox?
Being vulnerable. Like as an individual, I don't shy away from the fact that I'm not the expert anymore, right? The team are the expert. They're the ones building the products. They're the ones really driving this stuff forwards. Therefore, I like to ask a lot of questions and show that, look, I don't know.
I'm okay, you know.
Yeah, like, and what that does is that then gives the team the ability to do the same thing. If you come from a perspective of you've got all the answers, the team will never feel like they can ask questions.
Do you believe that one-on-ones make sense in this asynchronous? Because that's actually very synchronous. It's very direct.
And this is one of the things that I've spoken to a lot of people here about is when I say think async, it's more from a think async first and then transition to synchronous, right? So experiment. If it doesn't work, it's fine, right? Like move it back. And one-to-ones is one of those that you could experiment with it, be it asynchronous. It depends on your circumstance. If you've got somebody in a different time zone, or both of your calendars are absolutely packed, right? Could you still do this asynchronous? The way that I've set up asynchronous with my team is we have Miro boards that we can input into at any point. But then we have a synchronous meeting so that we have time together. Like
to make sure to build a bond between the team members.
Exactly, but that's using both methods, right? And you could go extreme one way, you could go extreme the other way, but that's entirely down to the individual, how that person wants to work. Some people might prefer an asynchronous one-to-one, right? They might be really hungover, right? And they might go, I can't talk to people. Can we just do this over? And that's fine, right? And that's the true power of asynchronous, is that flexibility.
And how do you keep people engaged, you know, in this asynchronous approach to work and still connected? You mentioned this bots that pairs with, creates those meetings with other people, right?
Yeah. So with the engagement side, it's on two different levels, right? One is social engagement, and then one is from a how do you keep people engaged with the work you're asking them to do? Because traditionally you would book out a meeting and you would get that done in that time bit, right? But if you do it asynchronous, you're giving people a lot of trust to manage that time. So how do you then get them to input into that before the deadline? And that's something that we're still finding out. There are ways of doing it. One is to actually put like an emoji or a reaction to say that you've inputted into this thing, right? Okay. So you give a date and say, look, are you all right to do this by Friday? And then when you've done it, when you reviewed it, just put a little reaction, put an emoji, do whatever you want, just so that we know you've done it and you're finished. And what that does is that encourages people to make sure that they do it, right? Because it's then they will make the time to do that thing and then input into it, give it a little thumbs up and move on. If you find that people are struggling, it's not because they're not engaged, it's probably because they've got so much other stuff on, or they're not able to manage their time effectively with this type of stuff. So again, as an engineering manager, that's on us, right? To help people find that time, find those slots, but specifically for them, because not everybody works the same way. Some people will do it first thing in the morning. Some people would like to do it either side of lunch. Some people will do it last thing in the day, and all those methods are fine, but you've got to find the one that works for that individual. And that might even change over time, right? And that's why one-to-ones are so powerful. Is you could look at a board and see that like an individual hasn't engaged, and then you just speak to them directly and go, did you understand the instructions? Is there something wrong with the board? Did you feel like you've got enough time to input into this? But it's always coming from that perspective of empathy, of trying to understand why it didn't work, because it could be something completely unrelated. The social aspect is really interesting, and that is definitely more of a, you can't really socialize asynchronously.
That was what I was thinking about, the danger of asynchronous.
Yes, and you have to then make sure that as a team you can still interact and be together, and everybody be okay with that, right? We're all incredibly busy all the time, but we have to make time for each other. One of the things that we like to do is one day a month we get together, if we can, in an office, right? But doesn't mean we're not there to really work. We're there to be together, right? And socialize. It could be we could collaborate on something, we could innovate on something. We could just go play cards, right?
Gossiping, and that's exchange of information.
That stuff is really important, and you have to make sure that the way you approach that works for the team, right? You can do that stuff on calls as well, but it's not about forcing it. It's about getting the team to suggest that stuff and decide how we do that stuff. One of the things that I try to avoid is it being on one person to always be the social person. Like the team needs to do that themselves naturally.
Yeah.
Because that way, it doesn't matter who suggests it.
Yeah.
We all just get involved.
We are getting involved. Yes, it's great.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you very much for this interview. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.